Hi friends, Nick here. So I wanted to talk today about resistance to getting on the mat. Or another way to look at this is how to get back on the mat if you have taken some time away. So if you had a regular yoga practice and then you just kind of fell off the wagon, which happens to all of us, or if you are practicing but you're not being consistent and you're experiencing resistance to getting on the mat. So here's what I have for you. First of all, know that you are human. All of us experience this resistance. And for some reason, and I'm not really sure why, because I'm not a psychologist, sometimes we don't do the things that we know are really good for us. So even when we know something is super helpful, it makes us feel better, it adds to our life, we still sometimes just don't do it. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And I have 6 ways that you can help yourself to get back on the mat or to get more regular and consistent with your practice. So, first of all, I want to mention that you should be gentle with yourself if you're experiencing resistance or if you have fallen away from your yoga practice. Anytime somebody's been practicing for years and years, this is going to happen at some point where you're going to think, of taking a break, or maybe it's not even a conscious decision to take a break. Yoga just sort of falls out of your routine and your habit. And then, of course, as soon as something isn't a routine anymore, then it's even harder to get back to it, right? So as soon as something is no longer part of our routine, then it's like we have to make it part of our routine again, which then becomes difficult because habit creating is not easy. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I myself also, as well, have experienced resistance to getting on the mat. I've taken breaks with my yoga practice. I always come back. And so here are some of the tips that I think are helpful. The first one is to, on like a Post-it note, or, like on a dry erase, use a dry erase marker or whatever on your mirror, somewhere where you're going to see it every day. Write down your why. So why did you come to yoga when you first came? What brought you there? And then some of the benefits that you experienced when you were practicing yoga. So not like the benefits that yoga teachers list on their websites, not like the ones you Google, but like your personal benefits. Use your own words. So why did you come to yoga, and then what did yoga do for you? Just in point form, on a little Post-it note or on your mirror. And then if you use this Post-it note, you can stick it wherever. You could stick it on a mirror, you could stick it right by your alarm clock, whatever you're going to see it on a regular basis. So you're just going to affirm and remind yourself of why you came to the practice in the beginning, and put it somewhere where you can see it regularly. Number 2, be realistic. I know. Sometimes we think that we have to have all the fancy yoga props and 90 minutes and the best yoga music and the best incense and the perfect yoga outfit and a totally quiet house with no one around in order to do our yoga. Seriously. Most yoga teachers do not even have any of those luxuries. Okay, well, I do have a lot of props. And I do have some time to practice. But let's just put it this way. That's totally unrealistic. Of course, if you're setting yourself up for this sort of, yoga DVD version of what your yoga practice is, where it's like on the beach and it's like, then no wonder you're going to fail. That's not real life. Real life is short, sustainable practices that you can commit to. That's real life. So if that's 5 minutes, if that's 10 minutes, if that's 15, if it's 30, whatever it is, small amounts in imperfect situations. So if you have children, they might be around. If you can do it before they get up or when they're in bed. That's helpful. The dishes can wait. Trust me, the dishes can wait. But if that's not an option, just do what you can when you can. So The second one is be realistic. You don't need fancy yoga music. You don't need fancy yoga clothes. You don't need to have every prop in the world. You don't need to have a special room for yoga. You don't need to have 90 minutes. You don't need to have a quiet environment. You just need to have a regular amount of time in your schedule that you can slip yoga into, whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. Maybe some days it is 90 minutes, who knows? So that's number 2. Speaking of schedules, number 3, if it's not scheduled, it doesn't happen. I'm going to say that one more time. If it's not scheduled, it doesn't happen. Why do you think your dentist sends out reminders? Right? Because if you don't book your next dentist appointment when you leave, they know you're going to forget. Because if it's not in your agenda, time's going to go by, and time, if you're like me, the older I get, the quicker it goes. So time's going to go by, and you're going to forget, and then before you know it, you're going to be like, holy crap, how long has it been since I went to the dentist? That's why they send you those reminders. And the same thing happens with your yoga practice. So if you are, just sort of intending to do yoga, but you actually haven't put the time in your schedule, you won't end up doing yoga. Believe me, I know this. I have intentions to do all kinds of things, but unless it's in my schedule with a date and a time, it doesn't happen. Okay, so tip number 3, schedule it. It's not real till it's in your schedule. Okay, here we go. Tip number 4, leave your mat out. And before you go like, what? I know, those of you that are mamas, those of us that have pets are like, that's crazy. If I leave my mat out, it's gonna be a mess. That's okay, you can just clean it. You just clean it before you practice. But here's the thing, when you leave your mat out, again, it's just like that list of why. It's that constant little visual reminder. Oh, right, yoga. I could get on that mat. Right, yoga. So it's that constant little reminder. And you don't have to necessarily leave it out where you practice. If you have the space for that, that's great. You can leave it out in a corner of your bedroom. It just needs to be visible. So lay out your mat, put your props beside it, fold them up, make them pretty, and just leave it there so that every time you walk by that area, you're like, right, yoga. Replants that seed. So leaving your mat out. All right, tip number 5 is get on your mat. And I'm not saying this to be trite as in like, just make yourself practice. I mean, just literally get on your mat. There are days, even for yoga teachers, where I would just rather maybe spend like an extra 30 minutes in the bathtub watching kitten rescue videos and just kind of put off my yoga practice and not do it. There's nothing wrong with kitten rescue videos and nice long baths. However, I have anxiety, I have persistent pain, I need to do some asana on my mat, right? So here's how I started working with this many years ago. My mat was already left out, so that was step number 1. And then I would just sort of trick myself by saying, okay, just get on the mat. Just lay on it. You don't have to do a practice. Just go lay on your mat for a few minutes. And then before you know it, I'd be like, well, since I'm laying here, I may as well do some breath work. And then, well, since I'm laying here, maybe I'll just take a little quick lying twist here. Well, since I'm here, I'll do some hip circles and, oh, that felt really good. Okay, well, I'll just take a few minutes and stretch out my hips. You see where I'm going with this. So just get on the mat and lay down. And if that ends up being nap time, that's fine. If it ends up being a few poses, that's fine, but you just get on the mat physically. So that's tip number 5. Tip number 6, sign up for one of my Zoom classes, y'all. Here's what I know to be true. When you sign up for a registered semester, which is what my Zoom classes are, they're 12-week seasonal semesters. So there's a spring, there's a summer, there's a fall, there's a winter, you get the idea. When you sign up for that, for the whole 12 weeks, and you pay for it, and you've signed up on my system, and then it's going to ask you if you want to add it to your calendar, and whether you have Google or whatever calendar you're using, you click yes to add it to your calendar. Well, guess what? Now you've paid for it, and it's already in your calendar. You can even set reminders if you want, and you're more likely then to remember to show up. And the third reason why you're more likely to show up is that you're going to see the same people for 12 weeks. So for 12 weeks, and sometimes much longer, sometimes we've been Zooming now for a year. It's been a year. And sometimes I have some of those same students in the same class for a year. So for a year, we've practiced together, we've shared, we've grown. There's that sense of community, that sense of support. We do little check-ins at the beginning, which are always optional. So if there's ever a day you just don't want to talk, you can just pass. But it's just so lovely to see people, on a regular basis without a mask over their face. And there is something about that commitment level when you pay and it's in your calendar and you're going to see the same friends every week and practice together, that really helps. And if you do need to miss one, because, life, maybe you're able to actually go to concerts and things. I'm certainly not. We're still very much, as I film this, we're still very much in like nature walks and go to work kind of mode, go to grocery stores. That's about it. But if you do have to miss one for whatever reason, you get the recording. So there's some of the techniques that you can use to bust through your resistance to practice, or to bring yourself back to the mat if you've had a little yoga vacation. I'll go over those again. So the first one is start with your why. Why did you come to yoga when you first came to yoga? What did you hope to get from it? What brought you to the mat? And what did you get from it? So what were the benefits that you got from your yoga practice if you've been away for a while? Bring yourself back in your mind. Was it anxiety? Was it better sleep? Was it helping with persistent pain? Was it strengthening? Was it getting more flexible? Was it all of the above? Was it something I didn't mention? So whatever it was for you, write down why you came to yoga and then a few bullet points on what you got from your regular yoga classes. And then if it's on a Post-it note, stick that somewhere where you're going to see it regularly. You could also, again, if your family's okay with it, just take dry erase and write it on your bathroom mirror. That's a great way to see it a lot too. So number one is remind yourself of your why in a way that you see it repeatedly. Number two, be realistic. Home yoga practice does not mean you have all the fancy things. I actually had a student a couple nights ago say, even when she's joined my Zoom classes and I was saying things like just grab blankets and pillows and books, she thought that she was the only one using the blankets and pillows and that everybody else had like the full fancy yoga kit. No, not at all. Now, there are a few things that you need for class when you sign up, but it's pretty minor. And so she said she didn't even realize until she started practicing with us for a few weeks that like, oh, I'm not the only one who doesn't have all this fancy yoga equipment, right? So be realistic. You don't need 90 minutes. It doesn't have to be a purely quiet environment. You don't need the best yoga music and incense and fancy yoga pants and all the props to do a home practice. A home practice could be anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes or longer if you have the time, right? So be realistic. Number 3, schedule it. If it's not on your schedule, it ain't gonna happen. Just like your other self-care appointments, if you see a chiropractor or a massage therapist or whoever, if you don't have an appointment scheduled, you know what's gonna happen, time's gonna fly, and before you know it, you're like, ow, oh, and then you realize, oh right, I didn't book that appointment. So put it in your schedule. Put a realistic amount of time in your schedule and find a time where it's good for you to practice, especially if you have little ones. It might have to be before they get up or after they go to bed, but just find a little, or at your lunch break, find a little time and just put yoga in. Start small with a small amount. So schedule it. Number 4, leave your mat out. So when you're constantly seeing it, it's just this little visual reminder, right? My yoga practice. Number 5, get on your mat. Even if you don't want to practice, even if you don't know what you're going to do, just lay down there. Trust me, before you know it, your body's going to say, hey, why don't you move like this? And you'll remember a few of the poses that you used to do and you'll be able to do those. So just get on the mat. And then number 6, come to a Zoom class. So when you come to my 12-week registered series, not only do you have it in your schedule and it's prepaid, so you're more likely to show up, but you get that community aspect. You also get a recording. This is a great way too to double up your practice. So some people will show up, they'll get the recording, and then halfway through the week they'll use the recording and do the practice again. So that's another great way to make sure that you're getting your yoga in, is to actually commit to coming to class. And there's something about having it in your schedule, having it paid for, and that accountability of seeing the same people week to week that really helps. All right, so that's all I have for you. Hopefully helpful tips for those of you who have fallen away from your yoga practice or are currently experiencing resistance to your yoga practice. And one last thing I'll say here is that also let go of an idea about what your yoga practice should be, right? We're in very trying times right now, and it's not unusual to get on your mat and feel anxious or sad. That's okay. Your yoga mat is one of the best places to process those things. So, let me know in the comments below the video, if you're watching this on YouTube, what excuses or reasons you've given yourself in the past to not do your yoga practice. What keeps you from getting back on the mat? I'd love to hear them. If you like this video, take a moment just to like it. And if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, just take a moment to hit subscribe. And I would love to talk to you about this more in the comments. So let me know in the comments, what's the resistance? What works for you? Where do you need support? Okay. Have a great day.